Sure. Thank you for being with us today, Dr.
No,
Johnson.
thank you so much, Mark. It is such a pleasure to be here with you.
Did you originate in Haiti yourself?
You know, Mark, I've had that question asked, and I've actually thought about that question. And it's amazing. For the book, I had to do a great deal of genealogy. And as far back in my own family as I can go is southern Louisiana. My mother has the French last names of the Creole folks down there. But I need to do a lot more work because I would not be surprised.
Okay. For the revolution to start, I think, in 1791, we are already free ourselves.
Yes.
We have begun our own country. We'll get to John Adams in just a second as you spoke about him. But is it the French that take Haiti first, or does it fall to them later? How does their independence movement start?
Great. So France had the country Haiti was called Saint-Domingue prior to being Haiti, and it had been a French colony for just about all of the 18th century. And so at the time of the revolution, it was the world's most productive sugar colony under the French. Now that productive sugar production came at the expense of 500,000 enslaved people from the continent of Africa.
Wow. Okay. 1791 to 1804.
Yes.
13 years?
13 years.
And what's going on during those 13
So
years?
in the beginning, it starts actually, there are some people who started, and I think intellectually it starts in 1789 with the French Revolution, with the ideas of the rights of man, the rights of individuals to be free and have liberty. And then it takes off in 1791 when the enslaved people of Saint-Domingue rised up militarily and began to kill their slaveholders. And it is really chaotic in its early formation. There's no real military strategy. There's no real understanding of where this is going. It is simply a fight for freedom. And in the chaos, the French try to put down the rebellion. They fail.
Are they the governing body?
Yeah,
at
they're
the
the
time?
governing body at the time. And so the colonial authorities try to put it down. France sends troops to Saint-Domingue to try to put it down. And the Spanish, who are on the other side in what we now call the Dominican Republic, they see an opportunity for a land grab. And so they send their armies across the border into Saint-Domingue and try to capture French territory.
Cash in on the confusion.
Cash in on the confusion, exactly, Mark. And then what happens is the enslaved people are able to defeat them. And when that occurs, then the British come in and try to take advantage of the chaos. And the enslaved people rebuff them as well.
What does Haiti have that they all want?
Yes. What they have is what everybody in the 18th century wanted, and that was sugar. Sugar was the most productive slave labor crop. It was to the 18th century what cotton becomes in the 19th century. And on that basis alone, on the basis of sugar in Saint-Domingue, it was probably the richest slave colony in the world.
Okay, we know that John Adams, second president of the United States, he takes an interest in the issue.
Yes.
Maybe as early as, 1897?
Yeah, around
when he's coming in?
When he's coming in, actually.
Say 1797,
Yes.
Washington's out, he's in.
Yes.
What does he see?
So what he sees at first is chaos. But what he has is a fellow man from Massachusetts as his Secretary of State. His name is Timothy Pickering. And Timothy Pickering saw an opportunity to, at some level, because by this time, let me back up for just 1 minute. By this time, France and the United States are nearly at war. It's what we call the quasi-war. We do everything but actually go to war with land troops. And so the United States, the Secretary of State, Timothy Pickering, saw an opportunity to get a leg up on France by helping to remove one of its richest products, its richest territories, and that's Saint-Domingue. And so he pitches the idea to John Adams, and John Adams goes for it. Now, he didn't just walk into the office when they say, "Hey, Mr. President." It was an elaborate plan and strategy laid out, I think, with political precision that won over the president and eventually won over the U.S. Congress.
This is approximately 24 years before the Monroe Doctrine, I
Yes,
think.
that's correct.
So there's no order that tells European countries for hands off. So everything's up for grabs. So as you outlined, we have the English, the Spanish, the French, and now we're in the job as well.
Yes.
Okay. How does it finally get settled in 1804?
Yes. So it settles in 1804 when Napoleon...
Oh,
I know, yes, you got to throw Napoleon in here. So Napoleon in 1802 rescinds the French army to try to retake the island and to re-enslave the people. And that is the last, that is when Saint-Domingue moves from simply fighting for freedom to saying the only way we're going to be forever free is to be our own independent nation. And so they defeat Napoleon. I mean, over the span of 13 to 15 years, it is constant warfare on the island, except for about 2 years, and that you have to add that up in order to get the 2 years of non-warfare.
Bad luck for Napoleon. Battle of Waterloo, he loses this one.
Yes.
No wonder they cast him off after a while.
No, and Saint-Domingue is really, that defeat in Saint-Domingue is incredibly important to U.S. history, because when Napoleon, if he had re-enslaved the people of Saint-Domingue, he likely would not have sold us the Louisiana Purchase. His idea...
He needed cash.
He needed cash. But had he had those enslaved people, he was going to use what we now call Kansas, Nebraska, Arkansas as a breadbasket to feed the re-enslaved people of Saint-Domingue. But
wow.
Once he lost that battle, once he lost that territory, he really had no need for the Louisiana Purchase, and because he was getting ready to start up another war with Britain, he needed the $15 million more than he needed the land.
Okay, Dr. Johnson, tell us, does this lend itself to what becomes the demarcation line with the Dominican Republic? Does that come into play anywhere near that time, or is it much later?
That demarcation line becomes, it's in play because Spain, when it came over in 1792 to try to take the land, it owned Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic. In 1795, Spain gives that land to gives it to France. Toussaint Louverture invades that part of the island, and for the first time since Christopher Columbus, Hispaniola does not have slavery on its territory because of the Haitian Revolution. Now, eventually, the Spanish-descended people of the Dominican Republic are not going to want to be Haitian, and they're going to want to be Dominicans. And so in 1843, you'll get the line between the Dominican Republic and Haiti that we know today, and it is still quite contentious to this very day.
Now, I'm curious, because this is a bit of minutia, Dr. Johnson, but I'm curious. This is well before America has its manifest destiny. Do the Haitian people of Saint-Domingue have any even interest in partnering with us?
You have hit on an incredible, important piece of this story. One of the biggest fears for American lawmakers and American citizens was first that Saint-Domingue not partnering with us, but was going to invade the southern states.
Like Florida?
Well, we didn't have Florida. Actually, Florida comes into play in 1819.
Okay.
So Georgia is our southernmost colony. That it was going to invade Georgia, South Carolina, what we now know as Alabama, and free the enslaved people there. Americans saw this as a possibility
threat
of the revolution that they had feared of enslaved people rising up across the world.
Uprising African Americans in this country because they see.
Exactly. There was an incredible fear of people across the United States, and it was a very real fear. And one of the ways in which Toussaint Louverture and Adams come together is by Louverture going out of his way to convince Adams that he had no interest in expanding the revolution of Haiti beyond the boundaries of Haiti.
America, at some point, Dr. Johnson creates what is known as Liberia,
yes,
a place to send indentured slaves back,
mm-hmm,
correct?
Yes.
It was almost like we created a haven for them.
Yes, that's correct.
Do the Haitian people who want their freedom even know about this at any point?
Yes. So they do know about it, and they compete for African American citizens. When they understand from 1815 to 1825, when we are beginning to send African Americans to Liberia, Haiti has a need for sharper minds. They have need for workers, and so they actually run ads in American newspapers inviting African Americans. I mean, to the tone. Let me just kind of paraphrase.
They'd have to escape to leave to go to Haiti.
To Haiti, yes, but also free. They want free people of color who live in the North, and their pitch is: look how poorly you're treated by the United States of America. Come down to Haiti and be a part of your own people. And tens of thousands of African Americans go to Haiti between 1815 and 1825.
This is wild, because I never knew this. They're targeting
yes,
free black men
yes,
in the North
yes,
for better living conditions to come to Haiti?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Wow.
It's incredibly ironic.
Does the State Department or individual state governors say, hey, wait a minute, we need these people to do whatever chores or work? Is there interaction, in other words, from our people saying, enough?
At some level, there is complicity among white Americans because the Liberian movement was that movement run by white Americans to remove African descended people from the United States. And so the white Americans were at some level complicit that removing this part of the population would be better for the United States.
It's incredible.
I mean, it's not a consensus on the African American side. It's not a consensus on the white American side, but it was one of the major discussions that were being had from Maine to Florida by this time in the United States.
So what I'm learning from you, Dr. Johnson, is there was a tremendous potential for Haiti at that time to become a power.
Yes.
And somehow they either lost their way or through circumstances, they ended up just limping along to become a poor country who were besieged by terrible storms and things that kept them on their back, to the fact that they're still in bad condition and haven't gotten off their knees since in the last few years. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's a really adequate and very unfortunate characterization. And Diplomacy in Black and White, my book at some level is a book about what could have been.
Yeah.
Because
it could have been a kingdom. It could have been a kingdom.
We could have been I make the argument in the book, or I try to lay out the details in the book that demonstrate that John Adams was laying out a plan and laying out a foreign policy structure within Haiti that would last well beyond his presidency. But as we all know, in this country, elections matter. And so that when John Adams was defeated by Thomas Jefferson in the election of 1800.
Jefferson goes the other way?
Jefferson goes, I mean, it's almost 180. No, it's not almost. It was. Within weeks of his inauguration, he removes the U.S. Navy from their bases in Haiti. He recalls our diplomats and downgrades them from their titles of diplomatic titles to very innocuous trading titles. And we really have no formal relations with Haiti, and we do not recognize the independence of Haiti until Abraham Lincoln in 1862.
It's interesting that the Adams family, both John and John Quincy, have foreign policy experience, more open-minded, would have looked to this.
Yes.
Jefferson, as you said, he turns the other way. What about Madison and Monroe? Do they have any interest in restarting things?
So when Madison and Monroe come along, 1811 and in 1817 for both presidencies, beginning both presidencies, both of them have a Jeffersonian view. They maintain that view of we are not going to have relations, official relations with Haiti. But at the same time, these men, as most politicians are, and I'm not mad at them for that, they're incredibly pragmatic.
Yeah.
Trade, unofficial trade, continued between the two countries without any formal recognition. So commerce continued, diplomacy did not.
I'm curious, do the Haitians look at alternatives? Do they say, all right, they don't want to play with us? We'll play with the Mexicans. We'll play with the Brazilians. Do they reach out and do they get turned back, or is there interest?
They do. They reach out quite broad and quite deep. Britain, because what has happened in Haiti has not happened in the history of the western part of the world. And it is really frightening that people of color were able to break their chains literally and rise up and gain their freedom. So Britain is still a slave power. France is still a slave power. So they do not want the example of Haiti contaminating their systems in Jamaica and other places. And so Haiti really gets the cold shoulder from any of its potential trade partners across the Atlantic world. France recognizes Haiti in 1825. But only after Haiti has to pay France $25 to $50 million for its property, considered the country. So basically, they had to pay them for their own freedom.
They had to buy their way out?
They had to buy their way out, yes. They won it in the war, but to get recognition, they had to buy their way out, yes.
So they're starting from a very negative cash flow.
And for the rest of the 19th and into the 20th century, they're paying off that debt.
It's an incredible story. It's the only book I've ever heard of that addresses this issue.
I think it's important for Americans to know, and I think one of the things I love about the story, and it wasn't me, the great thing about a historian is that I don't have to make it up. It's all right there. These people did it. I saw a moment in American history where we were able to see a possibility in people who looked very unlike the governing leaders of the United States and said, there's something we can do together. Here's a possibility, despite all of our differences, this is something, this diplomacy, this relationship that could last is something that's going to be good for both of us. And we went with what was best, not with what we simply wanted.
Is it true that the Haitians had more cultural training and advantages over American black citizens?
At that time,
I heard they were better educated. They had more cultural diversity. Is that true?
Yeah. So in Haiti at the time, you had this elite like you have in every culture, a class system. So you had people of color, mostly who had been what we would call mulattoes. They called them gens de couleur. They were free and they were educated and they had been sent to France. They were well spoken. They knew how to be leaders. Free black people were a bit behind, and then of course the mass majority of the population was enslaved, uneducated, and so on and so forth. And so it's very difficult to see the numbers of how many people in Haiti were better, how many people were better educated. I would imagine if you were to put the numbers together, including free people of color of the North and people in the Haiti, the numbers would probably come out. But the biggest difference between people of Haiti and free people or enslaved people in the United States, in Haiti, it was their country. They were the leaders. They made the decisions, and they were something that people of color in the United States would not be until 1868. They were citizens of a nation. Free and enslaved people in the United States were not citizens of the United States until the 14th Amendment in 1868. And so that Haiti had a lot of things that people of color in the United States did not have.
Does Haiti have to go through its own civil rights movement?
That's a really good question, because even though people of color are in charge, that does not mean everybody is equal. And so one of the biggest complaints about the Haitian Revolution, about Toussaint Louverture, who is considered a hero, is that the vast majority of people of color, black people who have been enslaved, many of them remain in those positions for decades and generations after. They remain tied to the land. Toussaint Louverture and the first few leaders actually make rules to say, even though you were enslaved on this land, you cannot leave without permission. You're free, but you have to stay here, because the only thing they had was an agricultural society. And so they basically forced former enslaved peoples who had won their freedom to remain in a type of a quasi-slavery type labor system.
So the United States duplicates that in a post-Civil War.
That's Mark. That's very astute. It's very, very similar. It is incredibly and horrifically similar to the way it plays, the end of slavery in Haiti and the way it plays out, the end of slavery in the United States and the way it plays out.
This is outside the parameters of your book, but how is it that they ascend into almost military rule later? Dictatorship, yes. Strong military component?
It is actually the way it began from the very beginning. I mean, the way Haiti began, the way Saint-Domingue under France had been ruled was always by a military general who was a governor general. When Toussaint Louverture, the leader of the Haitian Revolution, took power, one of the first things he did was make himself governor for life. And each successive leader for well into the 19th century, is going to take on the dictator, emperor, sole ruler role that we see played out in Haiti to this very day at some level. It's been a part of their political DNA, and it has been just an incredibly and impossible challenge to get it out so far. And it is so unfortunate for the people of Haiti.
So to kind of take us to modern times, it's outside the parameters of democracy in black and white. What's our future with Haiti?
Our future with Haiti, in the short term, I'd like to think it's going to change, Mark, but I think in the short term, is going to be what our past has been. Mm-hmm. The United States has found itself in a position, Republican or Democrat, of having to pick a side, having in many cases pick a leader who starts out being the way we would like them to lead in a democratic way, but somehow finds a way to fall back into a familiar dictatorial role. And that has been our experience in Haiti. And at some level, we find ourselves complicit in supporting that system, unfortunately. And so in the short term, I wish I had a more optimistic outlook. But I think given the current state of things, this pattern is going to continue for quite some time.
What was the reaction of your students when you first spoke to this? Were they as aghast as I was to hear about this?
My students, and I give them a great deal of credit, the question was, why have I never heard this before?
Exactly. I was watching your speech at Texas A&M. I'm like, why did I never hear this?
Yes, and honestly, Mark, I wrote the book because I had that exact same reaction when I said, I'm reading these documents. I've never heard this before. And I think it says something so good about who we are as a people, as Americans. And I think Americans should know that well before the Emancipation Proclamation, there was a way to deal equally with people of color. And in the midst of an incredible racially tense time, we found ways of doing that. And I think given our history, given our present, I think those are lessons that Americans could really take to heart and know that we're capable of so many great things in this country.
Dr. Ronald Johnson, the author of the book Democracy in Black and White, our guest today on WNDB. Dr. Johnson, a real thrill to see you. Thank you for coming
Mark,
in.
thank you, and thank you for the interest.